Welcome to the UNSECURITY podcast. Each week, Evan and Brad give an inside look at current information security news, breaches, best practices, and other things you should know to improve your information security. Here are your hosts, FRSecure's Evan Francine and Brad Nye.
Good morning. It's another Monday morning here at the FRSecure Security Studio World Headquarters, meaning it's time for another episode of the UNSECURITY podcast. Monday, May 13th, 2019, and this is episode 27. I'm Brad Nye. I'm your host this week, and Evan's not physically here today, but he is joining us by phone. Evan, are you awake this early on the West Coast?
Yay!
Yay! Sounds like the caffeine has kicked in a little bit for you.
Second energy drink, man.
Good Lord. It's like 5 a.m., 4 a.m.? What time is it there?
My one kidney is screaming right now. That's okay.
So Evan is out in Anaheim to speak at the ISACA CACS conference. Evan, what are you talking about?
Oh, man. Seriously, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, that's when I speak, which is too early to be talking about third-party information security risk management.
And hopefully there's lots of caffeine for those.
Captivating audience.
Yeah, I was going to say that hopefully there's lots of caffeine for them.
Right. Yeah. And you know, I don't know if you know this, but it's a slightly different tribe. ISACA is, the big A in the middle is audit. So there's a lot of auditors here. Slightly different tribe than ours, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's good to get your name out there. I know how much you love getting out and talking in front of people.
Yeah, man, it's all about me. You know that.
So because Evan's not here today, I am joined in studio by a special guest. Today it was Ryan. Oh man, I'm going to mess it up again. Ryan Cloutier?
Cloutier.
At some point I'll get it. Maybe not. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
The French way to say is Cloutier.
I know. That's what I kept wanting to do it is.
And that's acceptable. As long as you don't put any D's in it. I've been called Cloutier more than once.
I can see that. So how are you doing today, Ryan? Oh, what'd you say, Evan?
Did somebody call you Cloutier?
Yeah, I actually had a couple of grade school teachers that would call me Cloutier. And
Wow.
When I asked if they were qualified to educate me, because clearly they couldn't read, I might have spent some time in the principal's office.
That's funny. It doesn't typically go over well to speak back to the teachers, right or wrong.
Fitting for today's topic.
Yeah. So we are excited to have Ryan join us today. Very passionate about training and teaching children around information security. We met last week and just really hit it off in terms of what your passions are, kind of some of the things that I work on. But let's get started with what got you into information security.
Yeah, my journey, and as I talk about information security, I always talk about it as a journey. My journey began too many years ago. Obviously, it's a podcast, can't see the gray hair. But I started out, building systems, building boxes as a kid. And, infrastructure kind of segued into software development, started coding, scripting. Spent some time doing data systems, spent some time, working in business intelligence. Security was always kind of the common thread that stitched that all together. And so I just kind of naturally migrated towards it. It's also probably the hardest thing in IT that you can do. Comes with the most challenges and puzzles. And so really it captivated me and had a lot of trajectory of growth for me to work in. And there was always a new problem to solve. And then, I discovered the people side of the equation. And really that's where my passion, today lies, is in, understanding that this is a human-based issue more than it's an IT-based issue. And, for as much as I want to be able to get the blue hairs to change their ways, a lot of times the older we get, the more stuck in our ways we get. And so really I try to focus on the kids because I think that's where we can make the greatest impact to really change behavior.
I'd agree. I think Evan has a great way of putting it. Evan, you want to talk about risk decisions and all that, your whole analogy around that?
Am I supposed to say something?
Well, we were talking about getting kids to change their way of thinking and their risk decisions and like driving in the car. I didn't know if you wanted to tell your story. I thought that was.
Oh yeah. Get him young.
Yeah. So I think
I was sort of sorry. You caught me. I had to move because some ladies out here like cleaning. I'm out in this I don't know.
This,
She says, "Clean, did you hear the door like start to open? This like big mechanical door."
no. Well, this is what makes it exciting.
Well, yeah, that's how we do things.
It's
but the
live.
so I hit the mute button as fast as I could because I don't know. You wouldn't think it'd be so hard to find a place that's quiet at 5 a.m. in California, but it is.
Yeah.
So I missed probably half of what you just said, but it was probably really good, and people are happy to hear it.
So where I was going with that, I'll tell it is, we talk about with kids. I was going to give you an opportunity.
I know, and I totally missed it. Swing and a miss.
Yeah. So, but with risk decisions, right? You get in the car, right? You put your seatbelt on. Why? Because you see your parents doing it, right? Or you're coming up to the red light or a yellow light. You make those decisions immediately. It's just something you've always done. Information security is not something that people have done, and so they're not comfortable or not familiar with making those decisions from a young age.
Yeah, absolutely, and we see that every day. I work with the kids and the parents and the various districts and public sector entities. And, a common thread is a race to adopt the technology, but not really a full understanding of the impact of the technology, right? So to your point about, risk-based decision-making, one of the challenges that we see daily is in even painting the picture that there is such a risk. One of the analogies I use with people is, if the internet was a real place, you'd never go there. Yeah. It would be the darkest, seediest alleyway in the world, and you would never set foot. Yet you invite it directly into your living room, into the palm of your hand. Yeah. And I think, it's absolutely an area where we have to focus is for all the empowerment and awesomeness that technology has given us. There really is a pretty vast gap between how we use it versus how we should be using it. Another thing is like if we drove our cars the way we surf the internet, everybody'd have a car sticking out of the front of their house in their living room.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think you're right. Like, to just see that, I've got this device, I've got access to everything, and don't think twice about what that actually means.
Absolutely, yeah. And especially with the youth. It's getting a little bit better with the oversharing, but I've heard horror stories of just even the previous generation from the current one that oversharing is still impacting them in their careers. They've had their identity stolen and they don't find out until they go to apply for that first car loan, that first apartment, and then they find out they own 5 foreclosed homes in Florida.
Right. Well, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, but one of the things in one of the parent training sessions I did was one of the moms said that her daughter was 13 or 14 at the time, a couple of years ago, and was recorded singing along to some rap song that had, inappropriate language. And one of her friends who recorded it isolated the N-word and just distributed out of context.
Yeah.
And there was a huge issue around.
Oh, absolutely. And I think with the rise of deep fakes, that's even becoming more prevalent and relevant. I don't know if you guys have been kind of keeping up with that technology, but, they're able now to fairly accurately reproduce video with any audio behind it, up to and including full mimicry of the individual's, expressions and motions. And it's interesting times.
Yeah. Yes. So you kind of touched on it. I think the part of information security gets you excited. It's the people, it's the kids and the protecting and teaching. It sounds like, is that?
Yeah. It's the greatest puzzle in the world is how do you convince somebody to do something different?
Right.
And so for me, that is truly exciting. Technology has fundamentally changed our lives, and in every other aspect, we have a slower pace in which we train our children, in which we expect them to get good at things, right?
Right.
We wait till they're 18 to call them an adult, and that has a lot to do with giving them that runway to make sound decisions before we give them power. And we kind of circumvented that when we gave them an iPhone.
Right.
or, a smartphone. I don't want to just pick on Apple, but, we give them a smartphone and we say, okay, here you go. Well, mom and dad don't know how to use the phone.
Yeah.
The kid does, and they're running circles. And one of the things that's starting to cause is a communication barrier between the youth and the adults. And that gap is only increasing, with each new technological revolution, new smartwatches and what have you. Now the kids are talking to their wrist.
Yeah. It's, so my, and Evan can talk about it. I think your kids are around the same or a little bit older. I think my oldest is 13. Evan's youngest is 14, Evan. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. My daughter's 14, the youngest.
So my phone, my oldest has a phone now, and she got Instagram on her 13th birthday. She wouldn't do it, but her friends have had it for years, and it blows my mind. What they're not even thinking about.
Oh, that's absolutely true. My son is a little bit older. He's 20,
just a little bit.
But what was interesting is in our household, we came up through this revolution. So what you guys are fighting now was bleeding edge when my son was your kids' age. And he wanted to be a YouTube star, and he wanted, Dad, can I have a webcam in my bedroom? And I'm like, absolutely not. Right. Well, if I was to go in a time machine, I might make a different decision, because back then, being on YouTube wasn't a income stream.
Right.
People weren't making millions of dollars at that time. Right. And when he wanted to, well, Dad, I want to play video games while I have this webcam on me. Well, the security privacy guy in me's going nuts. I'm going, no way, no how does my minor child have an unattended webcam in his bedroom? Not going to happen.
Right.
But, we see the longer term impact and how that's actually created an entirely new economy. And so as parents, I think it's important it's a delicate balance. And that's why I focus so much on common sense skills, basic life safety skills that they already understand in the physical realm. And I try to map that to the digital realm, because that seems to be very relatable and easier to understand. But, I think as a society, until we collectively agree that this technology can also be dangerous, today we don't think of it that way. We only think of it as helpful. We don't think of it as harmful. And I think that's a barrier right now to us truly using and leveraging it in safe and sane ways.
Yeah, I agree. It's with my kids just coming up into that, it's a little scary.
Well, and there's societal side of the conversation, right? One of the conversations we had in my house was, hey, Dad, everybody has it. Do you not want me to participate in my peer group?
Right. That was a big...
And that was ultimately what tipped the scale towards getting him a smartphone, was that I did start to see a little bit of a lag behind in the social structure of his peers. And I didn't, none of us want to see our kid have any less chance of success in this world. And so that was really difficult. So we put a lot of parental controls in place, some physical parental controls, not just relying on the software. It's time for dinner. Hand the phone over.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. My daughter her phone doesn't go up to her room. Right.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. You're fighting, sort of a tidal wave of influences, outside of the house where everybody else is doing it. And then your child almost becomes kind of an outcast, in their own, little tribes, because they can't participate like everybody else, so it's hard. It also seems like technology just continues to move so much faster than we have the ability to, absorb it and secure it. You mentioned kids know more about, the phone than their parents. And the phone is dangerous. It's like, yeah. So at some point you kind of have to slow down and just kind of take it in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the big barrier there that I run into almost constantly is the administration that we ask to raise our kids. I mean, let's think of what a school is today and what we're really asking these folks to do for us. And it's take a leading role in the development of our child. we have not given them the funding, the training, the equipment, the knowledge, or even relatable points, to the previous point I had made earlier about the conversation barrier that's starting to form between the youth and the adults. I see kids now that communicate in emoji language. And, I kind of giggled to myself. I said, well, the Egyptians did that, many, many years ago.
It's cyclical.
And it is. and it's making a resurgence. Well, a lot of us are as good at reading emoji language as we are at reading hieroglyphics.
Right.
And there is no Rosetta Stone for that today. There's no real resource today for a parent to go get that up-to-the-date information on, what is that? What is the trend? What is the app? We see, it was all about Snapchat, and now we see TikTok. And TikTok's starting to become the front runner, if you will. Being that it's run by the Chinese government, it is actually pretty good at limiting and controlling speech and content.
Right.
But it's still there. And, there's a lot of background information. That's one that I usually get an aha from the audience on when I'm, giving talks is, have you ever thought about how much data's behind you in that photo that you just took, in that selfie you just took in the bathroom? Mm-hmm. Did you know that your name, address are on that prescription bottle that can clearly be read? It's
funny to hear. Like anytime I see those pictures of people, first thing I look for is, all right, what did they give away? It's kind of, it changes how we think about things, but
it does. And the, one of the things I'll teach folks, and this is, across all industries, but especially prevalent in education, because in education, teachers really are local celebrities. Mm-hmm. And they want to share and folks want to be excited about sharing. Well, they'll get a new job and the first thing they do is take a picture of their photo ID and their keys. Well, okay, we know there's kiosks at the mall that we can take, a photo of a key, reverse the image for both sides, send it to the kiosk and print out a physical key. And, scraping a photo ID and photoshopping a fresh copy is, pretty simple these days.
Yeah, it does blow my mind. I think, kind of going back to, with kids and changing that, one of the things with my daughter is I do the ISC squared safe and secure online. And so, fortunately for me, unfortunately for them, anytime there's a new version, they get to sit through the practice session. So I think they do pretty well. They had a good example. Or last year, I guess, my oldest was, hey, they wrote the usernames and passwords for everybody on the board for whatever school app or whatever. I was like, well, can you change it? No. What?
Well, that's...
but she caught, hey, this doesn't seem right. So,
and that's awesome because, that's the kind of change we need to get. We need to get them to, have that awareness. And a lot of times in a school setting, child's digital identity is treated as a matter of convenience, mm-hmm. without long-term thought to the consequence of that identity, without realizing that Google account ultimately follows that child. They go, some of the higher ed institutions will accept a K-12, you can do a transfer of that account. And so, long behold, everybody has that information and the kids don't know it. So it's great to hear that, your kids are waking up to some of that stuff.
Fingers crossed. We talk, so we work with a lot of different schools and, I was talking to some students and we were talking about passwords and how to make strong passwords and using phrases and just trying to get that across to them. And they're like, yeah, it's pretty bad. The schools, we all know everybody's password because and they knew exactly what the convention was, and can you change it? Nope.
Yeah. Well, and what's sad is that's also true for the staff. My son came home one day and he goes, Dad, I know the staff Wi-Fi password. And I said, so do I. He says, how do you know? Is it because you work with the schools? I said, no, it's the building's address. It's also the same as the alarm code for the building.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. And that has been true for multiple years, even after it was brought to the administration's attention. And the answer given as to why change couldn't happen was that it would be inconvenient. Because again, they don't, as a whole, that industry struggles to understand the physical impact of the digital decision.
Yeah. We had talked with somebody and they were talking about trying to get multi-factor at a school.
the infamous uphill climb, right?
And his comment was, I have people that don't have a phone or device that could use it.
Well, and you have to be careful because, believe it or not, that starts to become an equity conversation very quickly.
Right.
And, when we talk about equity and diversity and inclusion, technology still today can be a barrier. Mm-hmm. And a lot of districts and even, public entities, cities, counties, small local government are hypersensitive to that. And so any technological solution that's required without the funding to make sure that everybody has equal access, it can a lot of times be a non-start.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing is either we have to make it available and at large cost and give everyone a device or a key or whatever, or we can't do it.
Yeah, and we as security practitioners need to, and Evan's doing great work trying to fix the broken industry, right? We need to start to help secure funding. We need to start working with the lobbyist or become lobbyists ourselves or something to help sway so that getting a key fob isn't the end of the world, right? That it's like, well, we bought him the laptop. Right. We're spending untold volumes of money on these Chromebooks and, MacBooks. Right. And I've been in schools that have, state-of-the-art 3D printing labs. They've got smart light bulbs. They've, all this tech. But yet getting a simple $1.50, $2, USB second factor installed.
Nope.
Forget it.
Can't do it.
Yeah. They'll build a new football stadium. You know what I mean? So
I think it's that common issue we run into, right? At security or IT, it's a cost center. That's how they still very much view it.
One of the things that I'll say if I'm finding a district is resistant to the idea that security matters, I'll simply ask them how the building is controlled. And 90% of the facilities I deal with have some type of electronic door control. Mm-hmm. So they're using some type of HID, prox card type of system, keypad entry, something like that. And then when I ask them where the command and control computer is located, the answer is almost always next to the boiler in the maintenance room. And I said, well, does IT take care of that machine? Well, no.
It's facilities.
It's facility, exactly. And there's a difficulty at times in separating that and understanding that computer is responsible for physically securing. Right. And once that aha happens, I tend to find those districts become front runners for spreading the message and sharing the message and trying to go to their board and tax base and get some kind of funding.
Yeah. All right. So we've kind of gone into a lot of the open discussion, but before we go too much further, I do want to talk. We went back in episode 20, so 7 weeks ago. We talked about, we, Evan, and someone else, because I was on vacation, staying healthy and information security. So, we've talked a lot about, it sounds like you're doing a lot of volunteering, a lot of speaking, but how do you keep a good balance for personal and work?
I don't separate the two. So,
Evan just perked up.
Yeah. So I don't separate life and work. I take my moments when I need them. And I would say, there's three types of security. There is compliance-based, risk-based, and sleep-based. And I strive for sleep-based, right? So it's about, just finding that balance. I try to get some exercising in, a little bit of yoga. When I'm on the road, and Evan can relate to this, as a road warrior, your diet isn't always the best. Yeah. Your sleep isn't always the best. And so you got to take those moments where you get them. And I think that, for me, it's knowing my limits, knowing when I'm starting to run myself a little thin or I need to step away for a minute and take a breath, and then just doing that and not being shy about if I need a day, I take a day.
That's good. Yeah. I think, I think it's something we all struggle with. I think was it episode like 15 with our wives were on?
Exercise.
Yeah.
We were on the same page until you said exercise. I was like, no, not this guy.
Yeah, exercise is definitely it's a key part, right? It can rejuvenate you. It can, and sometimes it's the best way to get the stress out. Because let's be honest, if you work in information security, you're gonna have some stress in your life.
Hey, and there was one thing too, Ryan. Since you guys were sort of talking about it, you mentioned. I'm backtracking a little bit here, but one of the things you mentioned was it's no problem getting funding for this, that, and everything else in K through 12. But you mentioned security, and you can't get a couple bucks for a UBO key or something. How do we change that? Is it changeable? I mean, the people who make the decisions to do those funds, is it possible to build security things into the grants? What do you think on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for example, here in Minnesota, we have the Safe School Levy. Last year, I gave testimony to the Senate in an attempt to expand the definition of that legislation to include cybersecurity controls. We weren't successful in getting that change implemented. A big part was that the cybersecurity legislation they were looking to pass was so laborious and rigorous that it created kind of a non-start. And so I think the way we change that is, first, let's do something. Let's if where we have to start is just getting those door computers secured, and that's how we get that funding door open. That's how we get those conversations going and support from the community. I think it's great, and we go after it. The short answer is every tax-paying constituent has to start speaking up that this is a problem and that we need to solve it. And so the more we do things like have a podcast like this and we spread these messages and do the talks that we go out and do, we got to get mom and dad and the kids, right? I think it's going to take some time. A big part of why we focus on the kids is that I don't have to convince my son this is important. He now gets that. He's not quite yet to an age where he can have the degree of influence needed to get our legislator to, open up money, but there's not a lack of awareness on his behalf. If I even go 1-2 generations up from him, what's the big deal, Ryan? It's no problem. We've been posting our lunches to Instagram since it was invented. We don't understand, the issue. So I think change is twofold. It's time that we have to kind of be a little patient, which is hard for us IT guys and InfoSec guys sometimes. But the second piece is we have to make this a community issue and really raise that community voice, because that's really the only way we're gonna get the administration to, do what we need to have done. It's similar to the arguments we've had to make around active shooting, and how have we gotten funding released for that? It took some unfortunate tragedies to get people to wake up. But now that they're awake, and I hate to say capitalize on it, but I think it is relevant to at least relate to it, because I can foresee a day where, a student who is going to commit an active shooting crime also uses technology to create disruption, to unlock or lock the doors, or set off the smoke, set off the fire alarms, and
cause chaos.
Exactly. False alerts. One of the ones that we've heard about is, and they're just doing it for fun right now, but it's terrifying. Some of the kids are hacking the PA systems. And they're doing it to play a song. It's all over TikTok. It's a viral thing they're doing right now, and they basically hijack it and play the owl song. Well, the fact they can hijack the PA system from their phone because somebody plugged a Bluetooth adapter into the PA system so they could play Spotify over the school radio is the same tech those kids can exploit to then cause trouble.
Yeah, it's scary, and I think one of the things that has surprised me the most is is maybe the reluctance of some of the school systems. So I do the Safe and Secure Online. It's a free program. There's zero cost to the school to come in and speak to the students about security. And it's almost impossible, I found, to get in. Well, no, we have a good program. We have somebody who's in charge of that.
Well, so yeah, and that's the fear piece, right? So I would say a lot of the districts I interact with and just school in general, they want to control public perception. They want to not show their warts, if you will, right?
Right.
Well, they're no different than any other industry, right? Any industry, any human, right, has some things that are great about them and some things that are not so great about them. But when we get into the school world, they want to control that perception so tightly that they do foolish things like turn down that free training that's going to actually make the world better.
Yeah, it blows my mind. The teacher, I'll come in to do PTO, to do the teachers on as part of their, they have to do continuing education and training. Let me come in and talk to them, and talk to the kids. No, we're good. We got it covered.
Well, and I identified that issue early on into my, segue into the K-12 vertical.
Right.
So what I've personally done to try to change that is with the organization I'm with today, we've actually developed a series called Cyber Safe Schools for Educators, and it is a CPE-backed security awareness training specifically for teachers, specifically in the classroom. And we had to take that approach in order to get adoption. One of the things is it's a very siloed industry. So what the administration knows, and really is passionate about doesn't always match what that classroom teacher's experience is, or that buildings and grounds guy, that facility service guy, right? And so we've had pretty good success with breaking the message apart and making it very relevant to the individual. And also too, we've been swaying, the school board association. We've been working with some of the other professional development orgs to help push down the importance of it to that classroom level, so that we're not dealing necessarily with that local administrator who maybe wants to protect a viewpoint or position or perception, but really trying to change the tone at the higher level. And that speaks to what Evan was asking about earlier. How do we get funding? How do we bring about this change? And it really is at working with some of those higher level national organizations to set a new precedent, and then working with the local organizations to bring that precedent to bear. And that's ISC Square's great organization. It's hard for
their tribe, right?
It is a tribe. It is absolutely a tribe. And the challenge that we have is understanding their tribe.
One of those things that I'd be really interested in working, I think closer with you, Ryan, and I'm sure, and I'm sort of speaking for Brad too, but I know where Brad's heart is on a lot of these things, because he does that safe, the safe and squared, because, we give a crap, right? We care about people. We care about children. Security is not about information or security. It's about people. And it's sort of heartbreaking to know. I think it feels like we're losing this battle. And I know, be patient, but while technology continues to get further and further sort of away from us, we're making progress, but not keeping up. It feels like the gap is getting longer. And so, I don't know how to really craft the message, yet, but I know that if the more people we get working together, maybe we get better. We can craft a message that will resonate, because we have to get these kids young too. Like super young, because now people I see kids walking around, 7, 8 years old, even younger, with a phone in their hand. It's like, what the hell? So yeah, anyway, we can get back to the health thing, but I would like to figure out a way where we can collaborate more on this, because we shouldn't take our eye off this ball.
Absolutely. And, one area that I'm getting ready to target that I think would be great to partner with you guys on is, coding in kindergarten. Well, that's cool. I'm all for it. Can we do secure coding in kindergarten?
Right.
Please don't make new bug makers.
Yeah. Let's teach some fundamentals first before we go to that. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. So
hey guys, I gotta run over here, but you guys take the rest of the show because I got to get ready for this talk thing.
good. Well, good luck. Break a leg, right?
Yes.
Isn't that what they say now?
See you guys soon.
All right, now. All right. See you, Evan.
Thanks, Evan.
So have you done anything? Have you seen that K12cybersecure.com? Have you seen that link before?
Yeah, I've definitely checked that out, and great informational resource. The challenge that we face, and part of why things like that don't get as a higher rate of adoption, is that it's still very technology focused.
It is.
And what we find is a lot of the educators working in technology or with technology in the schools didn't necessarily start out in technology or even have a deep technical background. A lot of times they're a media affairs specialist who kind of upgraded job positions or was asked to help out early in the days of tech. And as tech grew and the adoption grew, so did their job responsibilities. One of my favorite folks I ever met was a tech director who was getting ready to retire a couple of years ago. And he looked at me and he says, I'm glad to be done. And I said, well, why? He says, it's moving too fast, to a point Evan made earlier. He says, the stuff is changing so quickly. And I was a little taken aback by that statement because as a technologist, that's what we're wanting. That's what we're looking for. So purely from a technological viewpoint, the faster it changes, the more awesome the toys get. Right. And I said, well, how did you get into technology? And he said, well, back in 1980, I think 2 or something like that, they bought a bunch of Apple IIes. I was the only one that could figure out how to wire them up.
Yeah.
I became the director of technology. And I said, oh, did you go to school past that? And no, everything was learned on the job in the context of supporting district technology, which left a vast amount of information unlearned, right?
Right.
And this individual was, the person in charge of making those security and risk decisions for the org, but without any foundational structure behind them to make that decision soundly.
Wow. Yeah, it's a tough position to be in. And it goes back to the funding, right? Was he even if he had wanted the opportunity to do it, would it have been improved? Would he have been able to do?
And what's interesting about that, I sit on a variety of national consortiums committees as part of the volunteer work I do, and I was having a call last week with one of the committees I sit on, and we're talking to the district technologists, and we talked about the talent gap and the talent shortage, and that directly relates to funding for continuing ed, funding for top tier talent. Our security guys aren't exactly cheap.
Right.
So one of the solutions that they're looking to do to get creative, and this is very exciting news for us in the K-12 space, they're going to their HR department and saying, look, how about we know we can't pay for the school, but what if we allowed them 1 work day a week or 3 hours a day on payroll to study and to take their coursework? Because they need that talent, they need that knowledge.
Right.
They can't afford to be without the human all day. In a lot of cases, tech teams in most districts are one.
Lean.
Yeah, it's very lean. One for sure. And the biggest teams I've seen, I think, were 8. Right. And that's in one of the largest districts here in town. And so they really can't afford to be without their people. So they're in this catch-22 of not enough hours in the day, not enough dollars in the wallet. And how do we deal with it? And so to see them take those creative approaches to say, we'll sacrifice some hours today or something like that I think is where we have to start until we can really push this through. Have you ever heard of the Gen Cyber program? Are you familiar with the Gen Cyber program? So what that is a joint collaborative between the National Security Agency and the National Science Foundation. And they provide grant money to institutions to run a cybersecurity boot camp for it's a week-long boot camp. I'll be I'm honored and humbled to be able to kick off this year's Gen Cyber camp that we're doing in Minnesota, up in Alexandria. Technical College is hosting it. And so they applied for and got the grant, which allowed them then to put this camp on. And for a week, the kids are going to come stay there. You know, they got their sleeping bags and stuff, and they're going to learn all about cybersecurity, and they teach it in a really powerful way. Obviously, the NSA needs some new workers themselves,
right?
But the kids get to learn how to think like an adversary, how to evaluate risk, how to actually do some ethical hacking. There's some lab work. There's, it's really an immersive experience, and it's, spend a week in the life of an IT security guy or gal. Yeah. I
was talking to one of the schools in the metro area, and they were saying that their students were going to be able to participate with something with, I thought it was DOD and then Virginia Tech. So it sounded very similar, where they hack and they can
same program.
Okay.
Same program. Yep.
Well, see, I did know it. I just didn't know the name.
Yeah, that's to some points that Evan made earlier. I think that's a great place to collaborate as well.
Right.
Getting involved and inserting ourselves as the local, businesses, as the local, parents, IT security parents. Right. I mean, we're probably the biggest thorn to any district technologist is a parent that works in IT and having questions that are not properly answered. And,
yeah.
So the more we can work with the vendors and the parents and everyone to kind of create that common language, I really feel like that's the place. And so these kids go to this camp, they get excited, they come home, they start talking to mom and dad about this cyber stuff, about this security stuff. A lot of times that's the first mom and dad's ever going to hear about it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, from doing the parent, talks, that's supposed to be like a 45 to maybe 60-minute presentation. I haven't had one that's been less than 90 minutes.
Oh, from the Q&A.
From right? And it's not like at the end, it's every slide is like just, they want to learn it. They're seeing their kids doing it, but there's not those resources out there, to teach them. So, getting the kids involved in it, having them talk to their parents, having us make things available, there's a huge hole.
There is. And the more we can do to fill that void, and frankly, the mom and dad need to work in this industry too. And that's a big piece where if I do, so sometimes I'll do career fairs at the middle schools and at the high schools. And when I go in to do a career fair, I have a little printout that I bring with me. And on the front half of the printout, it's got some stuff for the kids. And depending on where they are age-wise, the younger they are, the more I tell them we're superheroes.
Right.
And the older they are, the more I tell them we all have nice cars.
Right.
So, but on the back side of the page, I have a salary sheet because there's so many parents that and you know this, you don't have to be a technologist to work in this industry. No. Especially now with the industry exploding in growth, and there's marketing jobs and sales jobs. Yeah. And, even in the technical jobs, some of them are becoming fairly easy to do through the use of tools.
Well, and even looking at governance, policy, technical writing. Yep. Just, you don't have to be an expert on it. You just need to be good at one of these supporting skills, and the jobs are there.
Exactly. And so on that backside with that salary sheet is a few job titles and what they make. Mm-hmm. And when I give it to the kids, I say, take this home and give it to mom and dad. Right. Because there's such an aha moment when they turn it over and they go, wait, so if I had a Security Plus certification, relatively fairly easy cert to get, right? I could increase my take home by that much of a margin. Wow, maybe I do want to be in a different industry. Or for example, I have some friends of mine who are in industries that are, at risk right now. Mm-hmm. of automation and elimination. And so they're calling me up, seeing the curve coming, saying, well, I still plan to work for 20 more years.
What should I be doing?
Where should I focus? So I think the more we can have that conversation with our community, our friends, our family, I I think that's what we have to do to really get the change to happen.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about that with the huge shortfall. How do we get more people in? Well, women and minorities are underrepresented. How do we get more in? Career change, or the youth.
Yeah, right. And it's raising awareness too. A lot of folks, when they find out what I do for a job, they're like, "Oh, wow. Like that's hard," or you how long have you gone to school for, right?
Right.
And it isn't until I break it down to them in non-tech terms that they go, "Well, that sounds like something I could do." And then it's like that aha moment where it's like, yeah, you too can be an IT superhero, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that people don't get. Is they don't understand it. So there's this huge mystique around all these things, and it's like, this is just change your thinking just a little bit. It's common sense a lot of times.
It is, and I think with the work Evan's done to try to fix the broken security industry, right, and some of the things he makes reference to in his book, I think that the challenge that we face there is some of that mystique is that tribalism that some in the IT world, in the IT, specifically InfoSec, it's almost like a better than you.
They want to keep it. Yeah,
they do want to keep it, and I think that that's detrimental to us as a society.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think that superhero mentality that I'm going to come in and save the day and then fly out and nobody understands exactly what I did.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Right.
It's bad,
and
it's frustrating to work with too.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, I think we all have the story of working with that one human who they knew. I knew a Novell guy back in the day, and he knew Novell in and out and up and down and all around. Thought Active Directory was the worst thing in the world. Didn't want to learn anything about it. Hated it. But he was so smart with that Novell. And then the day that the leadership decided the licensing was too high, he was sucking buttermilk. He didn't know what to do. He had to bring in all these contractors. And once they implemented the new system, this hard work he was doing, this difficult job that no one else could do, all of a sudden everybody went, what have you been doing for the last 10 years?
Right.
So I think there's some of that as well.
Yeah, I would agree. You see that a lot. Wow. All right. So we're running out of time. So let's talk about the news really quick. I picked a couple of stories here that I thought, the first one definitely is relevant. Scott County Schools out of Kentucky scammed for $3.7 million. So that was an interesting one where they got an email from a vendor, turned out to be fraudulent, saying, "Oh, we never got paid. Can you please pay us?" And had the bank info, and they just paid it without validating anything. Luckily on this one, they did have insurance around it, but they ended up not needing it. The bank was able to recover the entire amount. I guess the scammers were in the U.S., so that was a huge saving grace. But as underfunded as some of these school districts are, I can't even imagine what would have happened if.
And that's great that they had insurance. I'd be very curious to see if that insurance would have actually paid out or covered. Something I run into every day, all the time with school districts is, well, we've got cyber insurance, Ryan. And what I come to find out when we look at it is they have a property casualty policy
with a rider,
and that rider covers the replacement of the physical technology, but it does not cover the intangible asset of data. And there's very few cyber insurance providers out there that actually pay for the true costs that you're going to incur and the loss of that intangible asset.
Yeah, that's we see that a lot too with our incident responses, where like, yeah, we've got it, we're covered, and then they're not.
Yeah,
or the insurance comes in and says, "Oh, we'll do the investigation if you want to get a payout." And of course, what are they looking for? Any reason
to not pay?
Yeah, you messed up.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing that we're seeing as a trend in the insurance industry right now. I work very closely with a couple of different insurance providers to create common sense insurance that works in the cyberspace. But one of the trends we're starting to see now is insurance companies calling cyber attacks terrorism so that they can refer to the terrorism exclusion clause and not pay.
Well, there's that big one with, was it the parent? Is it Cadbury, or it's one of the big candy parent companies? Mm-hmm. And the insurance said, nope, it's an act of war. We're not paying.
Yeah. And we've seen that with banks even. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that is an undefined area yet. So there's some court cases that we're waiting to see the precedent get set on, but it is. And so, anybody listening that has, think you have insurance, you should probably check what's actually in the policy.
Yeah. Verify it and read the policy. Don't go, yep, we're covered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We're seeing, we are seeing a couple now that are actually taking the FISA score for their underwriting.
Oh, nice.
So you've got, like Note International, Lloyd's of London, brokers that are doing it, and some others. But they were going, they're like, we wouldn't insure a building without doing a walkthrough, but we're issuing tens of millions of dollars on, a 2 or 3 page questionnaire that nobody really understands.
Well, and I've found a lot in districts where even if they have answered the questions, a lot of times they are unknowingly, or unfortunately some cases knowingly, falsely misrepresenting the facts. Maybe not
stretching the truth. just a bit.
Just a bit.
The next story was about unhackable biometric USB. So this USB device, the iDisk, which was using an iris scan to unlock, apparently it's pretty good from actually reading the iris. They couldn't hack it with someone else's, with his kid's eye, with a picture, until he actually put Wireshark on, and then it was dumping the password in plain text. So it was the software itself, I think. And to me, the bigger reason around this is why I don't like biometrics, is authentication. Identification, sure, but authentication, A, you can't change it, and B, it's the implementation that scares me.
Well, and there's that, and I wholeheartedly agree. You also have the legal ramifications. It wasn't until just recently that we finally had a court ruling that says that bioidentity can be protected, depends on the circumstance. Passwords are protected by the 4th and 5th Amendment.
Right.
Your fingerprints in your face and your retina, they are not. You put them on public display every time you leave your house. So I think for me, there's also the, where do those lines lie? And with the redefinition of the internet, and it's now non-telecommunication status, it's now a consumer service, a lot of the protections went away with that. And so, what happens when your fingerprint or your iris traverses, even if they aren't dumping clear text passwords?
Right.
What happens when it's intercepted during traversal? Is that, how is that treated? We know you can't tap a phone, but now can you tap the internet connection?
Yeah. There's good, again, going back to technology is so far ahead of, in this case, the laws.
Absolutely.
It's going to be years of trying to get this, but that's a mess. That's on Threat Post. The first one I should have mentioned, it's out of Kentucky.com, has the update that they got their money back. Last one for today is off of Information Security magazine, and it was Americans are overconfident in cyber hygiene. So I think they've published Cyber Hygiene Risk Index published that 88% of consumers express confidence in their own cyber hygiene. Oh, that's that website. I'm going to close that. Wow. That was annoying. Autoplay ads. That's going to not happen again. Anyway, 88% of Americans are confident in their hygiene, which I would guarantee you is not accurate.
Well, I think they are confident in their hygiene. I don't think their hygiene is very good.
True.
If we think about a similar statistic about, I just heard the other day that I was a little shocked by, 4% of Americans change their bed sheets less than 4 times a year.
Ooh.
So let that sit on you for a second. That same 4% don't wash their hands. or we're guessing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you were to ask that person if they're clean, they would tell you they're clean.
That's a good point.
Right. And so I think we have a similar situation where, everybody thinks they've got a great password. What they don't realize is I can go to their Facebook, anyone can, and, let's see. Well, 88 pictures of Snowbell the cat in the last 15 minutes. How much you want to bet your password is Snowbell? And, and whatever year you created it, incremented by 1 at whatever the password reset schedule was.
Right.
So I see that kind of stuff a lot. I also see, they think it's good because it's met a complexity requirement. We failed everybody when we gave them those complexity requirements.
Yeah, that was
And so, it's got a pound sign and a 1. So therefore it's a great password. Well, if it's password £1, it's really not that great of a password.
Yeah. That's that compliant versus secure mentality. Yes, it's compliant with the policy. It's not a secure one. Yeah, I think, whenever we see these things, you got to take it with a grain of salt. I think they're saying 5% share the following best practices. So they're backing up data using online and offline systems. Great. That's actually really good.
That is good.
I'm going to skip the middle one because I don't agree with it. But the third one, they use a VPN, ID protection, or secure password management services. So password managers, fantastic.
Yep.
Those are great.
I highly recommend them.
But then they pay for their antivirus software, not relying on free options, and they keep it up to date. Okay, keep it up to date, yes. But paying for their antivirus, that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Well, and as we know, antivirus is only as good as yesterday.
Yeah. Well, and did you see the story? I just saw it this weekend. I didn't have a chance to put it in on there were major antivirus providers in the U.S. that have had their source code hacked.
Yes, I am.
So that'll be in next week's for sure. We'll talk about that more, I'm sure. But you can't rely on that.
No, and actually, I just purchased a product over the weekend, and I'll let you know when I get done evaluating it what I really think of it. But they've made this little tiny IPS/IDS firewall called Firewalla, and it's made for the home consumer to be able to plug into their router and add sophisticated traffic patterning, IPS/IDS capabilities. It's got a mobile app with the phone. Like I said, I haven't even unboxed it yet, but if that does prove to be a more effective technology, I think it's going to be through things like that we can kind of up the game, if you will, and then just we got to retrain the folks on what is a decent password.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Tie it all back to the beginning. It goes back to education.
It does.
At the end of the day, it's just educating. So, well, that's all the time we have. We could absolutely go longer if we had time, but people probably don't want to listen to us for another hour. So, special thank you to Ryan for joining us today. Don't forget you can follow Evan or myself on Twitter. Evan's at Evan Francine, or I'm at Brad and I. And you can email the show at unsecurity@protonmail.com. Ryan, how do you want people to get a hold of you?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is through Gmail. And you can get me, or I'm sorry, LinkedIn is actually the best way to get a hold of me. I'm about to give my email out.
I know.
Bad security guy. Oops. It's too early in the morning.
So Ryan's LinkedIn is in the show notes. So we got the link for that. So you don't have to try and remember his email or his email. Now you got me doing it.
See?
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you very much. That is it for episode 27. And everyone have a great week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the UnSecurity Podcast. We value our listeners and would love to hear from you. Give us your feedback by emailing us at unsecurity@protonmail.com. That's unsecurity@protonmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week to hear the latest insights from Brad and Evan.